Today's TribCast is sponsored by the Texas Tribune Festival this November in downtown Austin. Hello and welcome to the Texas Tribune TribCast for Tuesday, April 29th, 2025. This is Matthew Watkins, and if you are watching on YouTube, I am not recently homeless. I am just dressed like a slob because it's technically my day off. And fun story, Eleanor, my wife, Susan, who you know very well,
Yes.
accidentally kicked my son's door last week and shattered her pinky toe. And so we were all up at 5 a.m. this morning at the outpatient surgical center getting a metal rod inserted in her toe. So this is why I look this way.
That story has so many twists and turns. She accidentally kicked your son's door hard enough to break her toe.
Yes.
In a way that required a metal rod to be put into the pinky toe?
That is correct.
How big of a metal rod can they put into a pinky toe?
It's, I could show you the X-ray. It's very, very small. Yeah, maybe more of a metal pin, I guess, would be a better way of putting it. But yeah. So careful when you're walking around in the dark after putting your kids to sleep, everyone.
Seriously.
Because you might have to get a metal rod. Yes. So that voice, as you know, is Eleanor Klivanoff. Hello, Eleanor.
Hello, Matthew.
So I have two other things to report to you.
Okay, great.
Thing number one is that I was talking to someone today who will be not named, who mentioned that they really enjoyed Eleanor's podcast.
Oh, amazing. I love that. As on Twitter, some people are calling it the TribCast, which I think is great. And it's not because Matthew is not equally important. It's just because his last name doesn't easily translate into the name of a podcast. Yeah. That's very funny.
The second thing you actually know about, but pretend like you don't, which is that listeners of the TribCast may remember our guest last week, Patrick Svitek, who joined us, who said the thing he missed the most about Texas was HEB. And then as he was signing off, shouted out, "Send tortillas." And I'm happy to report that our friends at HEB did, in fact, send Patrick Svitek tortillas and other HEB goodies. So what a heartwarming story. That's the impact we talk about when we talk about our journalism. Congratulations to Patrick.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I just do want to say, like, if anyone from, I don't know, like a car company is listening, I miss your cars.
Send Mercedes.
Yes. I have an update, Matthew, for you, which you also know about, but you're going to pretend like you don't, which is that after we did last week's episode on the race between John Cornyn and Attorney General Ken Paxton, I ran into Senator John Cornyn at the airport. I advised him to, give the podcast a listen, share if he had any thoughts. We invited him on, as we invite, anyone in Texas politics that wants to join us on the podcast to be on. He very politely took my card and said he would pass it on to his assistant. So we stand by awaiting an RSVP from Senator Cornyn to join us on the podcast.
The ball's in your court.
Yes.
John Cornyn's assistant.
Yes.
I think the only assumption that we could make if he doesn't join is that the assistant dropped the ball, and not at all that the senator would not want to join our fine podcast.
Right. Not at all that he put that card in his pocket and probably promptly sent those pants to the dry cleaner and never thought of it again. But I had a nice time chatting with him. So if he would like to come on, and then, consider that also an open invitation to Attorney General Paxton to join us as well.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this has been good. I think that's enough for the podcast today.
Yeah.
Okay, so this week we are going to talk about the Texas lottery. It's been an issue that has been gaining steam all legislative session. And during this session, when he's not presiding over the Texas Senate, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has been doing his best Marvin Zindler impression, showing up unannounced at stores and a state agency office to expose what he's portrayed as a growing scandal in the Texas lottery. This is a kind of a political atmosphere these days of dark rhetoric and fear, but this has actually been a pretty fun, old-fashioned political scandal. It includes accusations of stolen jackpots, store clerks preventing Dan Patrick from entering mysterious back rooms, and multiple resignations of state officials. We're likely to see a shakeup of the agency that funds Texas education later this year, the Texas Lottery Commission. Here to talk about this is Ayden Runnels, a general assignment reporter for the Texas Tribune. We recently hired Ayden, for those who are not familiar, from the Las Vegas Sun, where I believe they never wrote a single story about gambling. But since we hired Ayden here, Ayden has written 10 stories on the topic, and they've been great stories to watch. So welcome, Ayden.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, it's an irony that you pointed out one of our meetings, and I just can't believe that I almost avoided doing gambling coverage in Las Vegas because it's so complex. And then now that I'm here, it's like half of my brain is just lottery.
It's pretty simple here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty fun story to be involved in.
Absolutely.
No?
Yeah. No,
All right. Well, Ayden has been doing a great job. So thank you for that. And let's just start here. I really struggled with where to start because there's so much to this story. These a lot of complicated different things here. But I'm going to start with just a very simple question, Ayden. Can you tell us what is a lottery courier?
Of course. So a lottery courier is a website or an app in which customers can go onto it and order draw games, which is the games where you pick your numbers, or a scratch ticket. And somewhere in the state, usually in Austin or some in San Antonio, there is a storefront that will print the ticket that you order. They will physically scan it on usually like a Xerox scanner and then send you a picture of that lottery ticket. And if it's a winner under $600, they'll just cash you the money through the app. And if it's over $600, they'll actually mail you that ticket so you can cash it in yourself. So that's what it is on its simplest terms.
So like I could play the lottery from my couch, even though, as I understand it, right, under state law, I'm supposed to have to go in person.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, you can order it pretty much anywhere within the state of Texas. Most of the apps have like geolocation, and many will require like scanning of your ID and facial scan. But yes, you can order it from anywhere within the state of Texas. But the only restrictions on buying it in Texas from the apps are from the apps themselves. There's no law saying, an app has to have that state restriction, but there is a state restriction on buying lottery tickets. You have to be in the state when you buy the ticket.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay. And so this is a sort of novel approach that has gotten a lot of attention in recent years, specifically related to two kind of jackpots that have been awarded or not awarded, I guess, in recent years. One, a $95 million prize in 2023, and another one for $84 million this year. Let's start with the $95 million prize in 2023. Tell us what happened with this individual prize and why lawmakers may or may not be upset about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So in April of 2023, what we now know from a combination of reporting from Eric Dexheimer with the Houston Chronicle and a team at the Wall Street Journal, two overseas gamblers worked with several companies in the state of Texas to order roughly 50 lottery terminals, which print lottery tickets, distributed them across four storefronts, some of which didn't really sell products. I think one of them sold koozies and boating trips in Montana. And printed 99% of the possible ticket combinations over a 3-day period. And so that roughly amounted to about 2.5 million physical tickets to essentially game that jackpot and win $95 million. And this was done with communication with the top lottery official at the time, former executive director Gary Grief.
What do you mean by with communication?
Yeah, so from what we know, there were emails and records, emails and requests from the groups that were trying to sort of put this scheme together that said, if we come and we order these terminals, within under your process, is this legal, is this illegal? And what Grief had said at the time, and what lawmakers had maintained up until about February of this year, is we have no purview over lottery couriers. Which, what they meant by that is, current law says that you can't play the game by telephone, and so telephone they took to mean physically, ordering over the phone.
Like making a phone call.
Yes, making a phone
Yeah.
call. And so what they told couriers, including one courier that was involved in this bulk purchase, lottery.com, and other couriers which describe themselves as legitimate couriers, is that because we have no purview, as long as you're not running the store yourself, you don't need a license. So what some of these companies would do is they have LLCs that are owned by the same parent company. They would operate these stores, request the lottery terminals, install them throughout, and then print the tickets that way.
So essentially, like, someone went to the state and was like, "Hey, we are going to scam the lottery. Is that legal?" And they said, like, "We technically have no grounds in which to stop you."
It was in a little bit more vague terms
Sure.
than that. And from my understanding, from what I've talked with some former lottery officials who've told me, it was very much a top heavy operation. So Gary Grief was in contact in a limited capacity with these groups, but very little other people were in contact with these groups. So they sort of flagged that this was going to happen, and they sort of turned a blind eye.
All right. So, I mean, basically what we're talking about here is these couriers are creating a system that allows people to buy massive amounts of tickets, whether that's scratch offs or lotto, like pick number tickets, right?
So this is where sort of some of the confusion has occurred in hearings with lawmakers. Is so there was a courier company involved in the bulk purchase, lottery.com. But in Texas at that point, they actually hadn't sold a ticket in months, but they used their store to facilitate this bulk purchase. So no purchase for the bulk purchase, as they've described it, nothing was done through the app. The administrators of the company just said, we're going to print it ourselves. And a lot of courier apps right now that exist do have limits on, like, you can't buy more than 1,000 tickets in a day. But the same infrastructure was used for this bulk purchase.
So there's two problems, right? There's bulk
Yes.
purchasing in the eyes of the lawmakers, right? The
Mhm.
problems are bulk purchasing, and then the other problem is couriers. And
Yes.
couriers can, in some cases, facilitate bulk purchasing.
Exactly. Yeah.
But lawmakers have a problem with couriers, even if it's just me, myself, trying to buy one ticket.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand.
What do we know about the person or people who made this bulk purchase that allowed them to win supposedly $95 million?
We know very little about the people. We know from the Wall Street Journal article that one of the gamblers, whose name is escaping me right now, it was very experienced in going to lotteries and sort of using the odds in order to, win large jackpots. As far as the companies, we know, again, lottery.com was sort of one of the big facilitators. Their company was at one point a legitimate lottery courier service that had sold tickets online, mostly, I think, through a website. And they worked with these two gamblers to basically, facilitate the bulk purchase, because they already had the machines, and they figured if we partner with some other retailers, we can go from 12 lottery terminals to, again, I think the final number they had was about 50, in order to facilitate the means necessary to print 2.5 million tickets, 25 million combinations in a 3-day period.
It's such a crazy little scheme.
It would make a good movie one day,
Yeah.
or a limited Apple TV show.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, now let's talk about the $84 million purchase that has lawmakers' attention this year. Tell us about that one.
Yeah, so that one has a lot less, I guess, suspicion around it. Basically, a Texas woman who has remained anonymous, as most jackpot winners over $1 million tend to do, purchased 10 tickets through the nation's largest courier app, Jackpocket. And so she bought 10 tickets. One of them was the 83.5, roughly $84 million jackpot. The ticket itself was printed at Winner's Corner, which is a retail store that sells board games in Austin that has now become famous because of two appearances by our lieutenant governor in videos he's posted on X. And so she bought those um, as legally as someone who can buy a ticket through a courier can. She went to uh, try to redeem the ticket in March alongside her lawyer, and the lottery commission told her, "No, we're not giving you that jackpot until we're done investigating the win," which the Attorney General's office and the Texas Rangers are currently investigating the lottery commission and their proliferation of couriers. So.
All right, so these two cases have exposed, as Eleanor sort of mentioned, two different problems through the eyes of lawmakers. The one, the practice of bulk purchasing. I think we can all sort of understand why lawmakers might not like that, right? Like if you're playing the odds. I think I think it was the $95 million one, right? One of your previous stories said they spent about $26 million buying, almost all of the different possible combinations for that lotto pick, which then, guaranteed them to win like something 50 something $million after tax and that, right? So
and that 54 million was just like the main prize. I went back and looked, and they also won another extra 1 or 2 million in the lower prizes as well from redeeming those smaller prizes. Yeah.
So, that's not fair, and there are a lot of people who were playing kind of honestly in that who might have like lost the opportunity to win a jackpot. And also presumably you have to have a lot of sort of startup capital in order to buy 26 million lottery tickets. So I can see why the Texas legislature might not be crazy about that practice. Why do they not like the practice of buying these tickets over the phone? I mean, presumably, or not presumably, it is publicly stated. The reason that the lottery was created was to fund education programs in the state. Buying them via the phone would presumably allow more tickets to be purchased and more education to be funded in Texas. So what's the problem here?
Yeah. So the first argument is that it's not in the spirit of the lottery. And that goes back to that law that we mentioned about not being able to purchase it by telephone. And so during the very long February 24th State Affairs hearing, there was a point where Senator Mays Middleton asked, they asked courier executives, 3 of them went to testify, do you feel like you're breaking the law? And they responded, currently, or we don't violate any of the statutes. And sort of that opened a conversation about sort of circumventing it based off very fine language. So part of it is the spirit. Another concern with both the bulk purchase and couriers is that the regulation that couriers currently have, for example, the geolocation, the facial ID scanning, all of that is done basically at the goodwill of the couriers. Because there's no regulation right now, it could open up for illegal purchases to minors. If a child grabs their parent's cell phone and then buys a ticket that's already like pre-approved through the app, purchases out of state. I mean, if VPNs are used to trick the geolocation, I don't know of any instances, but I know that's something that lawmakers have been worried about. And then money laundering was another concern about buying tickets, and that goes more to the bulk purchase. But I think really the illegal sales to minors and out of state are the big concerns about couriers specifically.
I mean, how much of this is just like, I imagine at least some of these lawmakers, we have like a pretty conservative and in many cases conservative Christian legislature. Obviously, I think some of our lawmakers are at least, their priorities sort of focus around like morality, Christianity, things like that. Does that come into play at all? Is there sort of just like a distaste for the lottery these days?
Absolutely, I would say. There was a hearing in which one representative called the Texas lottery, I think they called Texas the state's biggest bookie. And so there is definitely also like a natural disdain for the lottery. And I think you see that as, calls for the lottery to be abolished outright. There were sort of just a few people saying that right from the outset, but now that's sort of really picked up steam as we've gotten later into the session and as things keep happening, resignations keep being filed and so on and so forth. So I think there's definitely the disdain for gambling in general, I think, has definitely bled over into the lottery. And there are big gaming interests in the lottery. The Jackpocket, the company that sold that $84 million jackpot ticket, they're owned by DraftKings, which is one of the largest sports gambling companies in the world. So there's definitely a lot of the Venn diagram there is very wide.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth noting that this conversation is happening during a time where a lot of gambling interests are spending massive amounts of money trying to lobby the legislature to push to legalize sports gambling or on-land gambling or casinos in Texas. And Dan Patrick, who's been one of the sort of leading voices criticizing the lottery has been very resistant to that idea too, right? So
Yeah.
so the ideology here aligns in that kind of way. I want to talk a little bit more about the legislative response to this, but first let's pause and hear from our sponsor. Deliver Texas-sized insight at your next event with the Texas Tribune's Speakers Bureau. Our reporters and editors are ready to bring your event to life with context and analysis only they can deliver. Book us at texastribune.org/speakers. And also the Texas Tribune Festival coming up this November 13th through 15th. Tickets to the Tribune Festival are on sale now. Prices will go up May 1st, so purchase them now at texastribune.org. Okay, Ayden, you have spent a lot of time sitting in committee hearings, hearing the discussion of this. What is the legislative response? What might we see come out of the Capitol in response to these scandals that have hit the Lottery Commission?
Yeah. So I think the big one that's gotten a lot of coverage is Senate Bill 28, which is one of Dan Patrick's priorities, which would criminalize couriers entirely. So it would explicitly ban internet sales of lottery ticket purchases and make it, I believe, a Class A misdemeanor. But there's also a bill that would ban bulk purchases. I believe that was authored by Senator Hughes. That would just say if you buy all the tickets, then that's illegal, and we're not going to pay out your jackpot. But right now, I think the lottery itself is in a very treacherous spot on its own that will require, I think, legislative input in order to fix. The current House budget proposal stripped the lottery of all of its funding to zero. And so, that can get put back in conference committee. But at the same time, the lottery is under sunset review, which means that they're going to have to pass a bill in order to continue the agency's existence. And so far, there's two sunset bills, one in the House, one in the Senate. Neither has gotten a hearing so far. So those are the two big things. There's also some other restrictions on being proposed about how much retailers can get paid, because right now they get about a 5% cut of the ticket sales. Some people want to increase that. Some people want to decrease that. There's a bill that would, sort of restrict how much a jackpot can get paid out relative to how much is being donated to the education fund. So it sort of rebalance that proportion. So there's a lot of little things, but I think the two big things right now really are the courier ban, which unanimously passed in the Senate, and then again, whether they're going to, let the lottery have its money back.
What does the lottery fund in Texas?
So the lottery funds two primary things. The education. I think their education yearly. I forget the name of the fund right now, but it gets about $2 billion a year in funding.
The K-12 education.
Yes, K
Okay.
through 12 public education gets about $2 billion, give or take. And then they also have several millions of dollars a year that go to veterans programs. They have a specific game that the proceeds go to veteran charities and things like that.
Yeah, I'm from Georgia
Mhm.
originally, and Georgia has this program. The lottery is how they fund what they call the Hope Scholarship, which basically says if you have, I think it's like a B+ average in high school, you can go to any state university for free.
Oh, wow.
And it's been like this huge program to really sort of keep people in Georgia, keep people in state, keep them going to school there. I mean, you go to University of Georgia, Georgia Tech. It often is criticized, I think, because it there's no income requirement. So it sometimes goes to people who maybe could afford to go there, but they want to keep those people in state. So the lottery there is very enmeshed in like that Hope Scholarship. I mean, that $2 billion to education, like, despite our recent investments in education here in Texas, imagine people kind of want to, there's a motivation to keep that money coming in.
I think one of the most interesting things I've heard in these hearings is actually lawmakers sort of writing off that $2 billion. During the first hearing that had the lottery in it, the February 12th Senate Finance hearing, I think somebody said like, oh, well, that amounts to about 2-3 days of public education. And so we could do with that. I think Senator Perry said we're addicted to the dollar. So there is some sort of conflict on how badly we really do need the $2 billion. But I was surprised, I think personally, to hear people saying they're willing to lose that money if it means getting rid of, what they call a corrupt agency.
Right. I mean, we just put all this money into public education. So I guess you could say like, it evens out in the end.
Yeah.
You add some, you take some back, and that's the public education story. Yeah.
Also among this is, charitable bingo is also a game that runs under the Texas Lottery Commission, and they're sort of being held hostage amid all of this confusion. There is a bill right now in the Senate that would sort of life-flight the bingo commission out of the Texas Lottery's purview and put it under I think the Department of Licensing and Regulation. So I think it'll be interesting to see that bill as well, whether or not the lottery stays, to see how much they trust the agency going forward if they move this, game to another agency entirely.
Ayden, you talk about kind of trusting the agency. I mean, the agency has been under a significant amount of heat this legislative session. It has been interesting to watch kind of their response, right? You had the commission sort of saying, we can't regulate these couriers, and then the legislature getting mad at them, and then sort of being like, well, actually, maybe we can legislate these couriers. There've been a couple resignations. Can you help me kind of understand like how much of this is neglect or poor management by an agency, and how much of this is just like them not having the tools, whether it's statute saying you can't do this, or any kind of enforcement capability to prevent these things that lawmakers don't like from happening?
Unfortunately, I think a lot of it is that agency sort of, I don't know if I have the authority right now based on my reporting to say outright malpractice, but, they did on February 24th announce that they would start censuring any retail stores that were partnering with couriers. And that was done the Monday before they were in two different hearings, one of them being on Senate Bill 28. So they sort of turned on its head after years of saying, oh, well, we have no purview over these couriers. We can't regulate them. We need to wait for an opinion from the Attorney General's office, to suddenly saying, actually, if you're with these, if you're partnering with these couriers, we're going to pass a rule saying you're going to have your license revoked. And the vote finalizing that rule actually happens today, on Tuesday. And so I don't think there's any expectations about there being contention. I think it's expected to pass pretty easily and unanimously. But it really does come down to, I think, the agency either not wanting to or just not feeling the need to regulate these until it reached a head. Could there have been legislation, that could have attacked this problem earlier? I mean, Senator Hall had, I think it was Senate Bill 1820 last legislative session. That was it is what Senate Bill 28 is now. So there was an attempt. This wasn't a problem that has completely blindsided lawmakers. I've been having conversations about this in public hearings since 2022. So I guess there is some culpability there in not recognizing it as a problem that would grow. And sales among couriers have grown a lot too in those few years.
Ayden, you spoke with the lawyer of the woman who won the $84 million jackpot that she has not been able to collect yet.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about her situation. I mean, that's a lot of money at stake for one individual person here.
Yeah. So from my understanding, she's just a normal woman in somewhere in Texas. Her lawyer wouldn't tell me where. And she just played on Jackpocket because she said she didn't like going to the gas station alone. And so she just bought 10 tickets on the app and won big. And then, got a lawyer, as many people who win these jackpots do, and they took the ticket from her and sort of lying in wait. The lawyer, when I talked to him, he said they're waiting on litigation. It's not an impossibility. They may sue to to get this winning. That she, as it appears, she does have a fair winning ticket. But I think there's also some hope that those two investigations will wrap up sooner rather than later, and she'll just get her money and be on her way. So there's some optimism happening.
Can you imagine like playing the lottery for years, not winning, and you finally win like at the exact moment that the wind changes on this, and now you're like $83 million
Just
waiting for you.
It's really an amazing confluence of great luck and terrible luck.
Yes, right. Yes. I honestly feel like she must be like, maybe the universe doesn't want me to have this money. Like there's something is in my way.
There's another lawsuit that I don't think has other people have written about it. It's smaller, where the man who won the Lotto Texas jackpot after the $95 million purchase is suing the Texas Lottery Commission, saying, well, they won by cheating, so that should have been my money. It should have never been paid out. So they're suing the company that won the $95 million purchase, saying, well, I think that money belongs to me because you cheated. And so he wants $100 million.
Same. I would also like us to be sponsored by $100 million.
Yes, $100 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I miss $100
so there's
million.
one last thing I want to cover on this, which is the Dan Patrick web show. I mentioned earlier at the start that he's been doing his best Marvin Zindler impression. I will ask y'all later whether either of you know who Marvin Zindler is.
Yeah, I keep laughing, but I'm gonna be honest, I'm not sure I'm getting that reference.
Okay, we're going to save that to the end because I want to talk a little bit about this. This is basically, he has been making videos, posting them on social media, right, where he shows up and interviews people involved in this, including at the store Winner's Corner that we've already mentioned. Just describe for us briefly these videos, Ayden, because I'm really enjoying them.
Yeah, I mean, so when the first one came out, I was just astounded. So Dan Patrick is standing outside of this storefront, and I've been to several of these storefronts myself, and they're really not that large. So he starts filming in front of the storefront, and then he goes inside and sort of questions the manager, as it were, that's at like the cashier register, and saying like, can I see the back? These are you guys sell board games. That's kind of strange. In his latest video, he actually swabs one of the board games for dust to point out
Settlers
that
of Catan. I would like to clarify too, which who among us doesn't have a Settlers of Catan board game gathering dust somewhere?
I was gonna say a dusty Settlers of Catan board. It feels very accurate.
And so, he in the first video, he has sort of a back and forth with the manager, and then they get a lawyer on the phone, and then he mentions that they actually did get to see the back. This time, I think in his latest video, they didn't. I thought it was interesting, his latest video, he also took a visit to the Texas Lottery Commission itself, and he was like, well, their office is empty. And I have to give props to his camera person, because there's a shot in there there's like a whole bunch of frames of lottery officials, and there's one right in the middle that's missing from the lottery director who resigned on last Monday, and they did just a little like something out of The Office, like a little zoom just onto the empty part, and then back over to Patrick as he keeps sort of giving his monologue. So there's a good amount of production that's gone into it. I think there's some like side transitions and things. So whenever I went out and visited these stores, I think I told my editor I was doing my best Dan Patrick impression, trying to live true to form. Yeah.
I mean, Patrick's been doing this a lot. Like, he did this to a THC store,
which carded him, right?
Yeah, they carded him as per the regulation requires. Yeah. So yeah, he's getting out there, getting out with the people.
I watched these. I watched the one at Winner's Corner before we came on, and it's just like, I have such sympathy and agony for this store manager who's like, he's like calling up his boss. He's like, the lieutenant governor wants me to show him behind this door. And, I guess like they cut off then, and clearly whoever he called on the phone, like told them not to let the lieutenant governor back, which is just like, oh man, I feel terrible for you. Patrick is, in all fairness, like very nice to this guy, and like sort of says like, I recognize you're just doing your job here, but high comedy. Okay, so Marvin Zindler. Ayden, did you look up Marvin Zindler? We were talking about it in Slack.
I did, yeah.
Okay, so Marvin Zindler, are you familiar, Eleanor, with the musical Best Little Whorehouse in Texas?
Yes, I am.
So for over a century, the Chicken Ranch, a brothel in LaGrange, Texas, popular among Texas A&M students back in the day, I understand.
I understand. Back in the day. How back in the day?
Back in the day, yes. It no longer exists.
Yes, way back
and
in the
for
day.
the record, I went to Texas A&M well after 1973 when Marvin Zindler, a TV reporter for Eyewitness News in Houston, showed up to bust the Chicken Ranch. He is this sort of flamboyant, like legend of Houston television, most known for his sort of what is it? Sort of stakeout journalism. He helped get the Chicken Ranch shut down, and then did some reporting on how it was allowed to operate for so long, where he got into a confrontation with the Fayette County Sheriff at the time, who apparently broke 2 of his ribs and ripped his toupee off his head in the confrontation. The film from that was destroyed in the confrontation, but KTRK kept the audio. And yes, Marvin Zindler, his legendary sign-off, Marvin Zindler, Eyewitness News, classic. So look it up.
I love that. That's a like classic Texas story.
Yes.
And I mean, sort of relatedly, we should mention, it's funny timing, we're doing this now. You mentioned Eric Dexheimer from the Houston Chronicle, who really broke this story initially about the bulk purchasing. He just over the weekend was named the Texas Managing Editor's Reporter of the Year, which really restores some dignity to the title base after a really low point for it last year when I was the star reporter of the year. So Eric Dexheimer.
Oh, by the way,
I just like, I want to congratulate Eric Dexheimer, which was not at all a venue to mention that I was Texas Managing Editor's Reporter of the Year. Yeah, thank you. Okay,
Eleanor, we're going to need you to work on your Marvin Zindler-like sign-off for next week's podcast. See if you can workshop some things moving forward here. But that's about all that we are going to do today. Thank you to Ayden for your great reporting on this topic. Thank you to Rob and Chris, our producers, and Rob, our theme music composer. We will talk to you all next week.